All right, next up, let's take a look at the GeoGebra graphing calculators. That's what it all started with. Sometimes you might want to use the calculator if you just need something really quick that you couldn't find that someone else had made. Maybe you want to modify something that someone else made. In any event, you have several calculator options to choose from. Let's look at how to start the calculator. You can see I'm at geogebra.org and I'm already signed in. I like to sign in so that I can save the material that I'm working on and use it in a lesson later, or maybe continue working on it and modifying it. I have a couple ways I can start the calculator. I can just use the Start Calculator button down here. That'll start the calculator suite. I can also hit the drop down at the top and choose one of these calculators. If you choose the suite, you can switch between them, but I'm going to start out with just one, and I think I'm going to start out with the geometry calculator. And you can see some basic tools have started out. To use a tool, I click on the tool. It'll give me a little tool tip down towards the bottom of the screen that tells me how to use it, and the tool will stay selected until I choose another tool. So let's start out with one that I'm sure we could look up. Let's do a quick activity on parallel lines cut by a transversal. I would go ahead and choose the line tool, and down here it says select 2 points or positions. I can also get additional help by clicking the help button. It'll tell me a little further how to use this tool. I'm just going to go ahead and click, and you can see it labeled point A for me already, and I'll click here for point B. Now I want to draw a line that's parallel to it. I mean, I could just try and draw a line, just like I did, because tool stays selected. However, if the students choose a move tool, I can move these points and the lines are no longer parallel. So let's not do that. I'm going to use the undo tool to get rid of those. And notice that once I've undone, I can read it. So I'll undo those. Instead, let's use some additional tools. If this was a geometry class, I would probably create the second line parallel using the compass tool and geometry. But GeoGebra has some construction tools built into it. Let's reveal those by clicking this More button. Notice how a whole bunch more different tools became available. We could even click even more if we wanted more, but I think the ones we need are here. So I'm going to look at the construct tools, and I'm going to go ahead and construct a parallel line. If I click on it, it should tell me what I need. I need a parallel line and a point. So I have a line. I'm going to select that line by mousing up to it. Notice how the cursor kind of turns into a different shape. That's how I know I'm going to select that line. So here's my line, and then I'm going to go ahead and pick a point. I'll just put it over here. So now I have lines that are parallel. I can double check that by using the move tool, and no matter what I do, however I change these original lines, I'm always getting parallel. I also want, since we're going to do 2 parallel lines cut by a transversal, I want to have another point so that I can say this is line CD. So I'm going to grab the point tool. And to make sure I get a point that's on this line, I just have to move till the cursor changes shape. Notice how if I put the point down here, that's not on the line. Let me undo. As long as I get this shape, now that point is on the line. You also might be wondering, what if you didn't want these to be called points A, B, C, and D? You can relabel those at any point if you'd like to. You could also relabel them as soon as you plot the point. If you plot the point and type a letter right away, it should change it to it. So, for example, if I wanted this to be letter W, I could do that. If I want to change other points along the way too, I can just go ahead and click on the point. As long as I have the move tool selected, I can click on the point, and notice how these other tools come up. So I can change the label here too if I wanted. So instead of being W, I can change it back to D. You can also change some other features depending on what you have selected. I could change the type of point. I could change it to any of these. Maybe open circle for if I'm doing things like inequalities, or if I want to just make the point stand out and be more noticeable. Depending on what you select, for example, if I select the line, I have the option of changing the line style, so I can change it to a dashed line or something else if I was doing things like an altitude or maybe finding an exterior angle of a triangle or also doing inequalities. I'm going to leave these alone right now. You could also do things like change colors to make things stand out a little bit more, change thickness, lots of options here just by clicking on and selecting objects that are already out there. But let's continue with our parallel lines cut by a transversal. So far I have parallel lines. I'm going to make one more line. I'll just draw it from here to here. Use the move tool. And again, students can move these around. Or I could use it as demonstration tool. I also want to put these points of intersection out there. So to do that, I'm going to get the point tool. And if I position it exactly right, it's going to go ahead and put it at the intersection, and that's going to remain at the intersection. And here I'll do another one. If I grab the move tool, I can go ahead and move some of these around. If I click and hold on the label, so they're maybe a little bit easier to see. All right, now if I move things around, those points are always going to be at the intersections. I can change these, and I can see how everything interacts. So now we can look at some properties of these parallel lines cut by the transversal. Maybe I'll use some things like the measuring tool. I can measure an angle. If I click that, it'll tell me what I need. I need 3 points or 2 lines. If it was just an angle with 2 lines, that would work. But there's too many lines here. So I'm going to use the 3-point method. So why don't we just look at the alternate interior angles. So I'm going to look at this one and this one, and we'll just measure those up. So that'll be that'll be angle C, G, H. Right, and it's telling me what the measurement that is. And I'll also grab angle GHB or BHG. All right, let's go grab the move tool. We can move these so that these measurements stand out a little bit. And we can explore what will happen if we change any of these. The students can make conjectures. And like we could pick other angles if we like, and you might wonder, hey, what happens if they move this too far? Well, if they start moving things too far, then we don't have alternate interior angles anymore. We have supplementary angles on the same side. You might be wondering if I want to change the number of decimal places on these angles. I can do that by clicking on the gear. In the gear, you'll see several options. I can turn on grids and axes. I didn't think I wanted them for this particular demo. But if I go down to the settings here, so I've clicked the settings gear, I'll set the settings again. And then a third time, I had to click this one more time. It tells me about the rounding to 1 decimal place. So I can set the number of decimal places that I'd like. You can also see some other options here. You noticed when I was labeling, when I first created my lines, I was automatically getting the labels of points. So you have some options, new points only. You can not have any points be labeled. I kind of like the new points only. If you have all new objects, it'll also label these lines. So it would give you these lines would come up with labels as well. All right, I'm going to close out of this menu. Before we go, I'll just point out these tools in the bottom corner. I can make things full screen. I can zoom in. I can zoom out. If we get lost, we can always hit the home button, and that'll bring things back into the one zoom and try and fit everything on the screen for you automatically. If I did want to leave some instructions for the students, I could use this text tool. Just pick any place and start typing. You can also get some special symbols and such if you use the computer keyboard at the bottom. If you want to find the Greek letters, if you want to find some functions, so you can use the on-screen keyboard to go ahead and put that in. I'm going to cancel out of that. All right, when I'm all set, I could save it. I could just go to these 3 lines. And you might notice some options here. Saving, export image. I mostly save online. That'll save it to my GeoGebra account. It'll give me a chance to give it a name. So I'm just going to call it parallel lines cut by transversal. I can save it into my GeoGebra account. I've linked up my Google Drive to this as well, so I could save directly to Google Drive. But I'm just going to save it to GeoGebra and hit save. I can get back there by clicking on GeoGebra. And I can get back to my channel by clicking here. And right here is the activity that we were just working on, the parallel lines cut by a transversal. We'll take a look at a couple more examples, and you guys will get a chance to try it on your own.